Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It is Friday, January 6th, and tonight we're actually going to use this 5-minute workbench to strip the bed frame. I'm not going to put the top on. I don't want the stripper to get on that, so I'm more or less using it like a sawhorse to hold the bed while I strip it. Hoping it doesn't take too long. It's like 38, 39, 40 degrees, which is warm for January in Pennsylvania, but cold considering the past week has been like 55 or 60. So yeah, hoping it doesn't take too long. It's going to be a huge mess. It's going to smell bad, but we're going to get into it. I also went shopping today, got some trim coil so we can start bending up some flashing for both the roof, for the finish off that shingle job, and so I can do some stuff around the bottom of the house. Given the old foundation of the farm, I'm getting a lot of draft, even though we did insulate really well with rock wool. So I'm hoping that some flashing on the outside will be able to curb some of that a little bit. I guess we'll find out. But that hopefully is on some of the task list for tomorrow. So without much more than that, let's get into stripping a bed frame.
So I'm using the run-of-the-mill, could burn your skin off chemical paint stripper that you can get at any hardware store. I tried to use some of the not so harsh ones and they just didn't work. It wasn't taking anything off. So they recommend you put it on for I think like 15 minutes and then let it sit to do its job. So I did that and then came back a little bit later and started trying to wipe it off. Now it's really made for like flat surfaces where you can kind of scrape it with a putty knife, and none of this intricate work allows me to do that. So I basically used a plastic bristled brush and a bunch of rags and would kind of brush it and work it in and work it off and then just clean it with the rags. It seemed to work pretty well. It was the best method I could come up with. It was still quite sloppy. I used an air compressor to blow out the brush a lot. And here's how the product should work on a nice flat surface where you can apply it and scrape it off as intended in buttery, smooth, slow-mo action. This really was the easiest part of this whole endeavor because, like I said, you brush this paint stripper on, it does its thing, it turns the paint into this gummy, gluey sludge, and then you can scrape it off, shake it off, and get it pretty much clean without really having to go back with a second coat or a rag or anything like that. So very happy with this part of it. The whole paint stripping process for what I'm showing here took me like 2.5 hours, and it was barely above freezing and definitely not enjoyable by the end. But I felt like I had to remove the paint because I have no idea how old it is, and it is a bed frame for my daughter, and with her age, I feel comfortable with it being removed. But if anyone has any suggestions on how to do this better next time, as I'm sure Kristen will have another project for me to do this on, I'd appreciate it because the way I did it this time was not enjoyable at all.
Well, that was a long, cold, and tedious process, but it's stripped as well as I'm going to get it done. I'm going to let it in the shed here to kind of de-gasify. It still smells like stripper, which is not super pleasant because I will end up painting it priming it and painting it in the basement because it's a little more climate controlled than the shed is. I'll probably still have to run my propane heater in the basement just to boost the temperature a little bit, but still better than the shed. So I think what we're going to do now, because my mother still isn't back with my children, which is good for me because I get to work longer, is take that workbench into the basement and screw the plywood top on it quick. So we'll see you down there.
So what I'm doing here is squaring up the 2x4 frame to the plywood to even out the frame that we made, and I'm attaching it with some small GRK screws because they fit the countersink holes in the plywood.
And there you have it. One quick workbench put together, and 2 bed frames, 1 bed frame, 2 headboards, not even 2 headboards, a headboard and a footboard, stripped of paint. So it's about 11:30. I'm going to call it a night. We'll catch you next time.